Hi, I'm Mark Bunstock, head of product at GitLab, and with 11.5 release of GitLab, we are really
Okay, we have the top of the hour, so I'd like to welcome everyone to the retrospective for the 11.5 release of GitLab. We'd like to take a couple of minutes up front to talk about some improvements from the last retrospective. We do have the issue list that's available there if anybody would like to go through and take a look at that. We have a couple of things to call out as notable completions. We've begun a training process for new backend maintainers. We've also added some QA maintainers to improve the efficiency for test automation merge requests. We've also updated the retrospective process, and there's a link to the merge request there that discusses that. One of the biggest changes that we're going to be trying out for this time is a timed agenda to make sure that we have as much time as possible for discussion of how we can improve at the end of the call, as that is important for us to try to maintain focus on. So there is a possibility as we go through, particularly what went well this month, what went wrong this month, that we may run out of time and need to kind of cut off and move to the next step in the process. So please be aware of that as we're going forward and try to keep updates in those sections brief so that we can focus on discussing how we can improve at the end of the call. With that, I will turn it over to Sean to start off what went well this month.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to mention was very specific, but I think it was also a good general pattern. Shinya had a merge request that needed to be reviewed urgently because it fixed an important production issue. But initially, the merge request was very complicated because it'd been working on something related at the same time, and therefore it was, it went into the same merge request. But as not all of that was actually urgent, he split the merge request up into two, updated the description, which was great because then you can sort of look at the description again to see what's relevant. And yeah, it all went fine. It went really well, in fact. So while we should try and make smaller merge requests in the first place, don't feel that once you've sort of gone down that line, don't fall victim to sunk costs. You can always iterate after the fact as well as iterating up front. So yeah, I don't see Annabelle, but I'm not sure the list is 100% in alphabetical order for me. So I might just take her item unless she speaks up. So the discretionary design got merged, which is great. There's been a lot of positive feedback. Fatih was really happy about the collaboration between him, Annabelle, and Mike. We did have some regression issues, which I just, Sean, copied in from our retro as well. But, it's a retrospective, it's a land of contrasts. So I figure that's fine to have good and bad in the same point. Dylan, how about you?
Yeah, sort of similar to what you're talking about splitting up merge requests. Our team's kind of getting in the habit of doing this more and more. And this last month was a pretty good demonstration. There was a lot of merge requests that were made out of the issues, and people figured out how to break down into independently deliverable chunks of work. So that's been working well for us. Over to Gabriel. Gabriel might not have clicked join audio yet. There is no mic.
Cody, your mic is hot.
Gabriel, you have a microphone now. You ready to jump in there or skip over? All right. Okay, Liam.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So from our side, there was a production incident last month, which in part was caused by some end-to-end testing gaps that we identified, which we think kind of had we had coverage, we would have picked it up. So we invested a fair bit of time looking into where the gaps were around our LDAP implementation. And we've definitely managed to sort of plug some gaps there. So big thanks to Sanad for looking into that. We've also noticed kind of the managed team are responsible for a lot of the customer app, which handles billing and subscriptions. There's been quite a few kind of interruptions we've been getting lead into manual work that we've had to do around that application. So Ruben identified almost like a top 3 priorities of fixes that we could do to try to reduce those interruptions, which kind of either have been shipped or will be shipped in the next release. So we're hoping that that's going to have a fair impact going forwards. And over to Elliot.
Elliot's not here. I'm going to be filling for him. My name is Madia. I'm a backend engineer in the Verify team. So the team felt like we've made a lot of progress in this release. It's the general atmosphere and the team that's really great, and we feel the progress that we're making, and we really value the merge requests that we are implementing. And the second thing is that all of the front-end deliverables were merged well before the 7th, which is really amazing. We've struggled to merge. We've always had a problem merging deliverables just before the 7th, and this release we merged them well before the 7th, albeit just on the front end. But that's also great progress. The next person is John Hampton. I think he's covering for Elliot as well.
Yep, thank you. So John Hampton, I'm the front-end engineering manager on Release and Verify. So for us, in similar fashion to the other teams, we had some issues that we broke down into small iterative merge requests, and that worked out really nicely for us. It seems like kind of a common theme so far. That's it for us. Over to Philippe.
Thank you. A big milestone for us. We managed to ship the group security dashboard, which slipped from the previous iteration. I'm mentioning that because that's a huge checkpoint for us. It was an issue that required a lot of moving pieces putting together, and we managed to do that during that iteration. So we're pretty proud to be able to do that. Also, we have the reports, the new report syntax available for all the features that we have. So that's also a good achievement for us. And with that, over to Bob.
Thanks, Philippe. So I wanted to thank the people on the GitLab team, Jakob and ZJ, for helping the Create team, adding new features, getting to know their code base. For lots of us, Go is also not the language you're most familiar with, and they've been super helpful, and we shipped some new features that required GitLab changes in 11.5. So very happy about that. With that, over to Seth.
Okay, actually, real quick, since we're at our 5-minute mark, we'd like to go ahead and move on. We do have other items under what went well. This is documented and available for everyone to read. Yarka, will you kick us off with what went wrong this month, please?
Thank you. So we failed to deliver, promote an issue to an epic issue, and it was because of the bad planning. First of all, we changed the scope of the issue after the planning. First, we decided that we copy only basic information like title and description, and afterwards we've decided that we will copy also notes and UI warning. And it was a big scope change. Also, besides that, there was more work than expected on the backend side. So we had to rewrite uploads and references. This could have been anticipated, but it not always happens. And because of these both things, we didn't deliver it. And we also had a lot of refactoring. I will also read the Kushal's point because he's not here. We had a couple of items scheduled for portfolio management, which was for both front-end and back-end engineers, but we didn't assign back-end person to those. So we failed to deliver them. Over to Dylan.
Yeah, so the first one's about EE merge requests adding significant workload. We had one particular issue that ended up having 6 merge requests that needed to be created in EE due to conflicts in the CEE code base. So that was quite a lot of time spent like keeping those branches up to date and stuff. It's not just a matter of creating them, but also constantly rebasing them throughout reviews and all sorts of other challenges. So it was quite time consuming. We slipped deliverables on a couple of issues we were working on, possibly underestimating the amount of extra work it would take for our team collaborating with an external team working on features for our products. And the other one is maintaining backwards compatibility for a lot of the stuff our team owns is quite challenging, and we don't have a clear, coherent strategy of what that really looks like. We support, previous versions of Kubernetes clusters, people in all kind of halfway mid states where they've installed some stuff through GitLab in the past and haven't upgraded certain things. So we have a lot of challenges with that, and it caused a fairly significant bug to get shipped as well that none of us noticed in the last release, but we did luckily fix that bug pretty quickly. Over to Gabriel.
So we were a bit delayed waiting for reviewers. We know that there's improvements going on, and we expect them to improve our shipping rate soon. Back to Elliot.
I'm going to be filling in for Elliot as well here. So there was a lot of confusion over ownership of front-end code and who was the source of truth there. We had a couple of production incidents because of this. Also, there was a lot of backend merge request congestion towards the 7th because a lot of merge requests were submitted for review near the 7th. And we worked on a feature in coordination with the create team, but decided not to merge it because we wasn't sure that the correct implementation approach was selected in the first place. And then I'm going to hand it over to John Hampton, also filling in for Elliot.
Thank you. So for us, three points. We had a very bad regression where a runner stopped respecting tags. We have a link in the document for some more information about that. There's a lot of confusion also around documentation and who is supposed to be doing what. And then we had some confusion and misalignment of the requirements of the deployment widget. And that's it for us. Over to Philippe.
We're still building especially the security dashboard on top of the new report syntax, which is quite new and bringing a lot of ongoing issues. So we are kind of building the plane while flying it at the same time. Thank you, Daria, for the commercial link. And it led to a lot of issues, especially for the usage ping, and also we had some problems with Auto DevOps where the new syntax was not fully supported. So we're still building on something that is ongoing. With that, going to Osvaldo.
Okay, so we had a couple of issues with this merge request. I think the first one is that we should have used the feature flag from the beginning, like keeping this in the mindset of just using the feature flag. So we merged this very close to the 7th. And we noted that it wasn't working well with one feature of EE. So yeah, we should have tested this on EE side as well. So we have a merge request, I believe, from Yorick that's working on automatically creating merge requests on EE from the CE side. So that's a thing that I'll discuss a little bit later. So yeah, we had to revert this merge request, but the good point is that we apply the feature flag, and then we could have merged this before and picked this merge request. So yeah. So the next one is Seth.
Actually, again, I'm going to have to cut us off here. Make sure we have time to discuss how we can improve items. So Yarka, I will kick it back to you since you're number 1 on that part of the agenda.
Yeah, thanks. So my point is based on what I talked about in the what went wrong section. So we should make sure that issues are UX ready before planning them, or at least make sure that we don't change the scope that much as we did last release. It was also an example of an issue where we decided that we will deliver more complex feature instead of iterating over small additions, which would be possible in that case. And I think we should honor our iteration value. And last thing, we in that case we could have discovered the how difficult the implementation will be before, which we didn't. So we should try to discover it sooner. However, that probably will always happen. Over to Gabriel.
So for the Geo team, we need to push harder to complete the rollout of the hashed storage. It is being used not only by the Geo team, but also other teams are building features that depend on it. We would like to have a larger data set as a testing bed for Geo. We've been spoiled by the GCP migration, where we could use the GitLab.com replica as a test bed for Geo. And as we don't have that anymore, this is delaying us on getting validation on big queries and other stuff for Geo. We also would like to restate the Geo team call or the demo team calls that we used to do during the GCP migration. And even though we have people in different time zones, and that would mean that someone will have to join in a strange time, but we want to do that at least once per month. And we want to shorten our review cycles. There is a comment from Tommy. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, I'm just noting that review cycles came up a lot in last month's retrospective as well, and here it is coming up again this month. We've taken some steps to add more maintainers and try to make that process a little more efficient by means of scale, but I am wondering, and this is really a question for the whole group, not necessarily just for Geo, if we need to be considering some more wide-reaching options in order to improve the cycle times for code reviews.
The more we add to each MR, the more we have to review. Like when we say we need UX approval, we need backend approval, we need database approval, we need docs approval, we need front-end approval, all in the same MR, that's going to take a longer time. If you can split those things up as much as possible, you will get things reviewed and merged quicker because they don't need to go through the 5 different people I just mentioned there, even if in some cases the same person can do the database review and the backend review or whatever.
So we can also say then that we've made some good progress in the last month, given all of what was discussed and what went well about how well teams feel like they're getting at splitting up merge requests. It sounds like. And Olivier, you have a point? If you want to speak to it.
Not sure he's in.
Oh, he's not here.
So I'm going to fill in for Elliot. Sorry, I thought we were at Liam, never mind. So yeah, on the Verify team, we need to do a better job at introducing people to the code base, meaning new people that get hired should get basically an introduction call to get introduced to that code base. And we need to have a working roadmap for our technical depth. We have a roadmap for our features, but we don't have a roadmap for technical depth. I'm sorry for barging in like this. I thought it was my turn. Liam, can you go next?
Absolutely, no worries. So by the nature of the scope of what the managed team work on, we have quite a few issues that come up that kind of have specific customer interest for enterprise customers. So we had one in particular in the last milestone, which was our smart card integration. And we put a lot of effort in towards the end of the milestone to get it shipped, but it didn't quite make it. So one of the issues that we found throughout the process was that probably we weren't quite as good as we could have been in terms of communicating updates back to the customer. So we found that there used to be a promise label that was used, and we've kind of decided to revive that back within the team. So we're using the P labels for prioritization. So obviously we pick up P1s first. But if an issue also has a promise label, we're basically going to go out of our way to make sure any status update is over communicated, certainly if it means that issue is likely to slip the milestone. So it might be a good idea if we can kind of try to roll it out across other teams as well. That's it from me. And then I guess that's then on to John H, who's covering for Elliot's other part.
Yep, thanks, Liam. So on the release side, we would like to try and avoid having multiple backend engineers work on the same feature at the same time. And then we also would like to consider the documentation requirements as part of the engineering discovery and issue planning. That's it for release. over to Philippe.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues in this iteration following the progress, not only from the engineering side, but from also the product side. We managed to split big issues like the dashboard in very small pieces and small MRs, but at the end, we had a lot of trouble following all of this, and especially the progress. So as you may know, I'm using a Gantt chart to follow all of this, but it's not ideal. And the two states that we have open and closed for the issue doesn't really help, because sometimes they are closed because we can't do anything for them, or they are closed because the work is done. So we have to go through all issues one by one to make sure that the work is done or not. And also we discovered that until the very end, we didn't have a clear overview of the progression on the dashboard. So we'd like to have some milestones inside the milestones to be able to demo, especially for the product, to make sure that we are heading in the right direction and to have a vision of where we are in the milestone. So that's it for us. And with that, off to Osvaldo.
Actually, real quick, I just had a question on that. The idea that we might need like a percentage of progression on issues, is that potentially an indication that the issues are too large and need to be broken up?
Even if you do that, it's not because you have 10 issues left and just one that is done that you have 90% of the job remaining. So not sure that it's going to help, but at least we're doing that internally with the secure team. We are updating the Gantt chart to make sure that we note the progression of the issues from a higher point of view. So if you add that to the issues directly, I'm not sure that is the right place. Maybe we need an epic for that, but the epic is supposed to be for several milestones. So we are, in the middle of something, I think, in this case.
Sure. I guess to be clear, it sounded like you were talking about having difficulty going through, having several issues, some of which are open, but you don't know what their state is. And I was just thinking if smaller issues would mean that the issues are open for less time, which should mean there are fewer issues open at any one point in time, so that you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time trying to figure out what state everything is in. Is that fair, or am I misunderstanding the problem?
That would help as well. Yes, exactly.
Okay. Sorry, Osvaldo, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So I think the idea with the issue that we had is that like having to revert a merge request that's not working well on EE, I believe we need at least a checkbox on the template of the merge requests on the CE side to at least make sure that people are testing, like at least manually creating the merge request on the EE side to make sure it's working, that the pipeline will succeed, and you have a review app to work on. So that's an idea. There's some discussion on Yorick that my point was not exactly right, because we are not automatically creating the EE side merge request. So for now, we need to create the merge request manually. So yeah, I think that's something that we should do from now on, at least changing the template to make sure that people are creating the EE side merge request. So next, Mark from Create.
I don't think Mark is present, so if somebody else from Create is here to step in.
I can take that. Mark noticed that we're using different package managers and across the different Go projects that is causing some confusion. And he suggests to add better guides for that. I also know that we have the GitLab Kit project, or the Lab Kit project now, which will collect some of the tools we reuse across different Go projects, so we can add them as dependencies.
I had the same question about that in the Golang channel today, because we at Distribution are introducing another project that is Golang based, and we want to have the same standards or learn about standards that we have cross Go projects. And apparently we don't have that. So I need to open an issue for discussion. I just don't know where exactly. So if anyone can guide me where to open this, I'll be happy to do it.
Handbook, development guides.
Does it belong in the handbook? Like CE, I guess, then, because we have development guides there.
We have development guides in CE, and there's like the database guides are also there. So I think that makes sense.
All right, I'll do it then there.
Okay, and is this, just to go ahead and verbalize my question here, is this the kind of thing where we just need to add better documentation, or should we actively consider standardizing on package managers if there's not a good reason for the different projects using different tools?
So I think we should be standardizing, because when we actually ship this, like talking now from the distribution side, we need to support whichever package manager that people are using. We currently have multiple inside of our projects just to be able to support them properly.
Just to add some context here, I think this is also caused by Golang not having as official module or package thing, but now they have, and we should probably just use that instead of using the multiple options that we used before.
Okay, great. Well, let's move it on to Seth.
All right. Yes. So I will dive in. So we have one thing that came up is that we want to make sure that the UX designers are involved much more in the development process, and that they're reviewing the MRs earlier. We had an issue where one of the major things we were delivering, UX designer didn't get a chance to really see it in action until very shortly before the code freeze. Another somewhat related issue is that we want to make sure we're keeping UX design and engineering concerns in the same issue. We had a time in this past cycle where we had two different issues going, one that was the design for the feature and one that was sort of the more engineering focused part of the feature. And there was some confusion there, and some front-end engineering had to be reworked when it shouldn't have. Another issue, which is somewhat related to the bringing designers in earlier, is making sure that we fully vet the DB schema that we're going to use for a given solution. And we had an issue where we didn't get some really useful feedback about that schema until sort of late in the game, and we had to go back and change a bunch of things that we wouldn't have had to if we'd figured that out earlier.
If that might have been me, Seth. If it was, yeah. One thing I would say there was that it was also kind of a product question, because I wasn't sure, like, the schema in that MR could have been either option that we had. It was just whether the team knew that we were going to add more to that, in which case one schema was better than the other as well, which was useful information to have there.
Okay, yeah, and I think that there are definitely a bunch of things that we can learn from this. But I'm going to end it there and send it on to Sarah for UX.
Awesome, thanks, Seth. So a couple of things that we think would be an improvement. One is writing issue descriptions so that the scope and requirements are clear to people who are brought in later. Sometimes we find that things aren't necessarily written in a way that someone coming from out of the blue can understand. There's a lot of kind of internal knowledge intimated in the issue, but not explicitly written out. So that would be really helpful for people coming in to get up to speed a lot faster. And one big recurring theme for us is just capacity, increasing the headcount for UX design and UX research to meet both the demand and allow us to become more generative would greatly increase our productivity and just ability to get ahead of things faster. On to Marin.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm stepping in for Yorick here. I do want to address that some of the items that we mentioned today or we seen today could have been better addressed by adding a feature flag around the feature. To also remind everyone that there is no need for an exception request when you surround things with feature flags. So theoretically, you get a few extra days to complete your thing and not have to rush. The documentation is written. There are documents for front end and back end as well. But until everyone starts using it, we don't really know what we need to improve. So please check that out, try it out, let us know what items are unclear and what kind of problems you ran into, and we're going to try and improve it for everyone. Like Yorick also mentioned there, turning on and off feature flags is simple. It can be done through Slack, and we have been using it successfully in the past.
Cool.
I think back to Tommy now.
Yes, that concludes the 11.5 retrospective. I want to thank everyone for participating and tuning in to watch. We'll go through and collect these suggestions and make sure that we make some improvements over the 11.6 cycle. And we'll see everybody again in a month. Thanks, everyone.